Awesome. So, yeah, let's just go for it. So, are you in Lancaster now, or where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Lancaster.
Okay. So, do you live there some of the time, but are in Germany some of the time, or what's your situation?
I live in Germany full time,
Okay.
but I still have a lot of family here in Lancaster, so I try to, like right now, I'm at my mom's, so I try to
Okay.
come and visit whenever I can.
And did you grow up in Lancaster?
Yep.
Okay. So do you are your parents or grandparents? Do you come from the Amish or the Mennonites? Do you have any ancestry there with the last name Stoltzfus?
Yeah, of course. I don't think you can be Stoltzfus and not have Amish roots, but my,
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, for the most part, you have to be right, correct? I mean, what I found is like Miller, that one can kind of go either way. There's a lot of Millers
yeah,
that are not. Um, there's another one I was thinking of that could sometimes go either way, but when you get into like
Kaufman.
Lapp, yes, exactly, that's the one. When you get into like Lapp and Stolzfus, though, most of the time,
I don't think I've
that's where it's
met
from.
any Lapps or, um, yeah, or Stoltzfuses in Germany. Um, but
Oh,
I've heard of Yoders, I've heard of Kaufmans, I've heard of what are some other typical Amish last names? Byler.
okay,
They say it and write it a little bit differently, but all of those
okay,
there are still over in the fatherland. But um, no
okay.
Stoltzfuses, um, no Laps that I know of.
Okay, I'm actually surprised about that because last night I was watching some of your highlight reels and it was some of your fights. I was watching the one fight that was, I think this one was a free fight in Germany. Maybe it wasn't the free fight, but there was definitely a fight in Germany. And they were saying it like it might be a name they were used to pronouncing over there. And I would have thought, considering our ancestry, that there would have been Stoltzfuses, but I did a one of those DNA tests, which I don't know, I probably shouldn't have, but it was a few years ago, and so my ancestry is like Switzerland, like close to Germany, but not exactly from Germany.
Yeah, so the Anabaptists that came over to the U.S. would have started in Switzerland and then moved up into the Rhine Valley of Germany and what's now France.
Okay,
And there they picked up their Pennsylvania Dutch, and then they took that language instead of their native Swiss
okay,
and brought that over into the U.S.
okay,
So pretty much anyone who has Amish heritage is going to be primarily Swiss German.
got it. Yeah, that makes sense. That falls exactly in line um with my test. My mom grew up Amish, and then I think when she was 7, they went from Amish to, I guess, like beachy Amish. Technically, it's called.
Yeah, the typical
And
route, beachy for a couple years so you don't get shunned and then move on.
oh, you're familiar.
Yeah, oh
That's
yeah, oh
funny.
yeah. That's what
Okay.
my mom and her family did. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
My
So
dad, my dad left. He never joined the church, so he when he was about 18, he just decided during his Rumspringa that he wasn't gonna live Amish. But my mom's family went more of like the beachy spring garden, slowly transition out of it route.
no way. So your
Yeah.
dad grew up Amish.
Yep.
Okay, and your mom grew up beachy Amish or Spring Garden or actually
Yeah.
Amish.
I think they were old order for like the first 2 years of her life, but much of her childhood was more beachy Amish.
Okay. So then how did you grow up?
Um, Mildly conservative Mennonite. So
Okay.
like normal house, electricity, cars, stuff like that, but a little bit more conservative than your standard American.
Yeah. So are your parents still in that tradition?
No, my father, my parents separated, so my father is down in South Carolina, lives a fairly normal life, and my mom is yeah goes to a pretty liberal church, I suppose. We
Okay.
still goes to the church that I went to as a kid,
Okay.
and it's I think a non-denominational church at this point, but used to be Mennonite.
Okay, fascinating. So this is something that not everyone would know about, but when you say like mildly conservative, there's sort of a dividing line between, or there's kind of like the Amish camp, and then the things that come out of the Amish camp, like the Beachies, and then there's sort of the Mennonite camp, which is like the horse and buggy Mennonites, the Groffdale Mennonites. We called them. I grew up in upstate New York, and we called them. Well, Joe Wanger was another term, which I don't know where
Mm.
that kind of came from, but
Pretty much all of these branches are named after the people who did it. Like
yeah,
Amish is after Ammon, Mennonites is after Menno, Beachy is after some guy named Beachy. I forget what his first name was.
yep,
Wanger Amish is Wanger. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But there's like a cultural difference, very much so, between like the horse and buggy Mennonites, the Joe Wangers, Groffdale Mennonites, and then the Amish, and then the offshoots of the Amish, like the Beachies. So I grew up at a Beachy church in upstate New York, but it was very small and it was like a new community up there. And so even though it was beachy, it was like, I think we were one of the more progressive. Um, and so when I would go to Lancaster to visit, because both of my grandparents were from Lancaster and my parents were from Lancaster also. So for all the holidays and stuff, we'd go to Lancaster and I'd visit those beachy churches, and they were like they felt very different than the church that I grew up in. Like they were like the more, I don't know, traditional or conservative, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like
So
that's the really hard thing to explain to people who don't know a lot about the Amish community is they ask how things are, and it's like, well, it sort of depends. You
yeah,
can go to a church down the road and they're driving tractors with rubber wheels and carrying cell phones. And then you go just a couple miles down the road and it's all steel tires, super
yeah,
conservative, no phone in the house, like sort of thing.
yep,
Yeah, all over the place.
yep, 100%. I think the thing I remember that I liked the least is when I would go to Lancaster, we would go to Mine Road a lot, and then also I'd been to Weavertown a time or two, and when I started dating my wife, she was going to Bethel, but at Mine Road, I remember as a kid, the young people would sit up front, and we would gather in the lobby before the service, and then just before the service started, we'd have to walk all the way down the aisle and sit at the very front. And I didn't really, I had friends, but I only saw them a couple times a year. I mean, just so I didn't know them that well, so it always felt strange as a visitor having to walk all the way up front right as church was about to start in front of everyone.
That's how we still do it at the church I grew up in. The youth kids sit
Okay,
up in the front. I think it's probably a tradition to make sure they're behaving, but
maybe. Yeah,
it's
maybe.
just like the open carriages, make sure they're visible and not doing anything in the back.
Yeah. What church did you grow up in?
It used to be called Paradise Mennonite. It's now called Grace Point. That's where I spent most of
Okay.
my childhood. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what age were you when your parents separated?
Uh, Sort of a long process. About 15 officially when I
Okay.
was like 23. So
Okay. So
at that
15,
point,
23.
was already living in Germany when they officially
Oh, really?
divorced. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I guess one of the things I was curious about is growing up, I didn't know how close to sort of the Amish Mennonite kind of tradition you were, but it sounds like you were very close to it,
Yeah.
which is I would think pretty rare for a UFC fighter. So how did you get into, which, by the way, I was watching your fights, some of your highlights last night, and I was thinking to myself, and we can talk more about this later, but I was thinking to myself, like, you know the Amish and Mennonites have they've gotten into, they're pretty legit softball players. They're pretty legit volleyball players. I heard from one of my friends who kind of plays volleyball that there's some Amish teams that are beating some pro teams, and so there's some pretty legit athletes. And I'd love to see more of them get into the UFC. I mean, why not? They might
Yeah.
not
And
actually be able to be Amish, but
runners too. Yeah. Some
okay.
solid long distance runners.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I
Yeah.
don't think I know any of those. So
Yeah.
How'd you get
They're an
into that?
athletic bunch. I always was super athletic as a kid. Did a lot of different sports. Wrestled to some degree when I was growing up, and uh, wrestled with my Amish cousins all the time. That's like
Oh
what we
yeah?
did. We went out into the haymow and we just wrestled. That's
No
that's
way.
what we did. Yeah.
Like what
Um,
age do you think this started?
I would have been, uh, yeah, like kindergarten, like from 5 up. Yeah. So
Okay.
that was what we like to do. We like to go out and wrestle. Um, so, I mean, and the work that you do when you're growing up on a farm is, which I didn't, but I was farm adjacent. I worked on farms when I was a kid. I went over there and helped them a lot. Um, they would babysit us, and then we'd have to help with chores. And this kind of strength that you develop on the farm is very, very conducive to wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I had a pretty easy transition from that, and then started mixing in some other things like karate and boxing and stuff like that, and just really liked it. And then the competition came as a part of just like, well, I'm spending all this time training. How good am I actually? So let's test it out. So that's how I made that transition. It was more like the actual competition part was just testing myself, seeing how good I actually am. So
Hmm. What age did you start to get into karate? And I would have to think that was that uncommon? I mean, if you were still in kind of the conservative tradition at that point, I have to think no one else was doing that, right?
I mean, we weren't super conservative at that point. Like as I
Okay.
said, I grew up pretty normal,
Okay.
just more Amish adjacent.
Okay.
Um, we had good relations with my Amish family and all that, but we did not live that lifestyle.
Okay.
So doing karate was okay. My mom was a little bit worried about some of the Eastern influences and Eastern religions that sometimes come in through uh, those sports. So she was a bit worried about that, but heard some good things about, um, uh, yeah, Midas Karate in Lancaster, and so took us there. And it was a good transition for me because I had been doing a lot of football and um, and more ball sports, but I was having some growing pains in my knees, and it was uh, the running around wasn't doing it for me. So uh, going back to a sport that's more on like a matted surface and where we weren't running around so much was a good choice for me.
And what age roughly was this that you were making these transitions or starting to dabble competitively with karate and so forth?
I never did karate competitively, but I started it when I was 15. Um, the competition that they have in that form of Tung Sudo is what it's called, is more touch sparring,
Mm.
and I'm very heavy boned, and I don't have to hit someone hard for it to hurt, and so I didn't want to go in and hurt someone and get disqualified, and it just wasn't really my thing until I started doing BJJ,
Mm.
and then competition was just a natural part of that. I think I did my first competition for BJJ a week and a half, maybe 3 weeks after I started training. Uh, but I had that wrestling background from when I was a kid, so it was an easy transition. But that one, it was like, oh, this is fun. Let's go and do this one.
Oh,
So
really? And was this
yeah,
mid to late teens that you got into the BJJ?
I was 19, so late teens. Yeah,
Okay. Golly, competing 1 to 3 weeks in from that's crazy. I mean, you had the wrestling background, but still, how did it go?
I got second in a beginners tournament. Yeah,
No way.
yeah,
You
lost in
competed.
overtime by points. Yeah,
You lost to the winner of the competition in overtime by points a few
yeah,
weeks after starting training BJJ.
yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay, so there's got to be a few things going on for that to happen. Yeah, one, wrestling background. Two, just sort of a natural ability. And three, sort of also some strength, right? Because
Lots
otherwise,
of manual labor.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Huh. That's fascinating. See, that also makes sense. One of the things that I was seeing you do frequently, at least in your highlights, but also you did it in Austin. When was that, a week ago? Is I'm sure there's a term for it that I'm not aware of, but basically, getting the double underhooks in and then slamming them down, picking them up and slamming them down. Um, I would assume that kind of you can do that in wrestling. Is that right? Did that come from your wrestling background?
So American folk style wrestling, at least at the level that I was doing it at in school, you're actually not allowed to lift someone up higher than your hips.
Mm.
So this the grips and the throws that I usually do in the UFC are more European freestyle um, grips techniques. But at the end of the day, the ones that I do the most, it's pretty much what I did when I was baling hay. You grab it, you pick it up, you put it down. Um,
Okay.
and while I'm here in the area, I was stopping by the farm that I used to work at when I was in high school, and I always have to joke around with my boss and say, "Hey, I appreciate all the training that you helped me with, just picking things up and putting them down day in, day out, from 15 to 18 every day."
Yeah.
It's the grind paid off.
Yeah, no doubt. Was that an Amish farm?
No, no.
Okay.
It's a small operation, so it's not one of those huge industrial farms. So a
Okay.
lot of it's still done by hand and with small equipment. So they didn't have
Did
one of those fancy balers rolling things up, or we had to stack them
okay.
and doing tobacco by hand and all that. Yeah.
Oh, so you did tobacco. Okay.
Oh
So
yeah.
I worked on a farm, I think from when I was 11, 12 and 13, maybe 14, but I think it was kind of over by then. I was starting to work in our manufacturing shop at that point. But in the summer, so it was raking hay, baling hay, putting hay in the hay mow, feeding the cows, milking the cows some, all that. But definitely
Yeah.
the dude, one time, I'll never forget this, but I have a younger brother who's 3 years younger than me, and we were unloading a fully stacked wagon of hay. Okay. So you have your hay wagon, the sides, and it was stacked. It wasn't just, so they have those bale throwers, but this was actually stacked. It was stacked all the way to the top and even above, because, you stack it above the rails a little bit too, if you're able to.
Oh, you had
And,
rails on your wagons. We didn't even have wagons. They were stacked and hanging off the sides.
oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, huh.
So you had to
I haven't
stack it
seen.
right, or else it would all fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah, you would. Okay, so you didn't do any of the bale throwing into the wagon because we did a fair amount of that, but you don't get nearly as many bales on the wagon. But no, our
They would
wagons had
they would
sides.
do it once in a while if the if the quality of the hay was real low. Um, they would rent one and just do it like that, because
Okay,
then the bales aren't holding together too well. They get sort of sloppy.
right.
Um, but if it was good quality hay, we just stacked them. I mean, they weren't paying me that much. It was cheaper to have Dustin stack it on the back than to go rent a machine. So
100%. So this load was stacked and it was down by the barn, and and my brother. So I don't know. I was probably, let's call it 12 or 13 at this point, and so he was probably 9 or 10. He was on the top of the hay wagon throwing the bales off onto the ground, and then I would get him and put him on the elevator to go up in the hay mow. And I had just put a hay bale on the elevator, and so I was not exactly by the wagon. It was probably from me to my garage, so probably 10 feet, 15 feet maybe. And, again, he's 9 or 10. He throws a hay bale off from the top, and dude, his hand got caught in the string, and he dove from the top of the hay bale wagon, from the very top of the hay, dove head first onto the ground. I mean, I'm talking, I don't know how tall you think that would have been, 12 foot, 15 foot. I mean, it was 10 foot at least, but probably more. And it's a split second where I'm at the elevator. I'm thinking, can I make one jump and get over there and break his fall? What do I do? And it just happened so quickly. Dude, he dove head first onto the ground and somehow was okay. I have no idea how, man, but it was terrifying.
yeah, I
So
mean,
have a little experience on the farms.
farm kids are built different, but
Yeah. They
uh,
really are.
that can go bad real quick.
They really are. Well, farming is so
Unfortunate amount of
dangerous.
tragedies on farms. Yeah.
Yes, so dangerous. It's bad. Now, let me ask you this: did you make it through without any injuries? Because I have some lower back issues. It's not a herniated disc; it's a bulge disc. I think that I would chalk up to. Well, first of all, the farming, but I don't think it happened from that. And then I got into the shop, and we were carrying, as a 15-year-old, we were carrying like multiple sheets of plywood around and multiple packs of shingles up roofs, and I think I just wrecked my back as a teenager. Did you make it through all that manual labor without any long-term injuries?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I ever really got injured while working. And I had done the farm work until about 18, and then I did carpentry after that, and then I worked concrete construction after that. So I was doing some pretty
Okay.
rough stuff. Um, but no, other than shooting myself in the hand with a nail gun and puncturing my knee with some wire and stuff like that, it's nothing serious. Yeah.
Yeah. What is your natural body weight?
About 200. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So when you go to 185, how how close before a fight are you, say, 200? How long before that fight?
Um, the weekend before the fight, I'm still walking around at an easy 200. I was a little heavier this time. I was actually close to 210 some of the time the week before the fight.
Golly.
But part of that was I was on a creatine load. So creatine holds a lot of water. So it took a little while to get work that out of my system. Um, but usually I'm a little less than 200 the week before the fight. And then during the fight or during fight week, you start water loading. So your weight varies drastically depending on what part of day. So I only weigh myself in the morning. And so I started off at about 205, and then I went down to 200 like the next day. And then it just slowly worked down. I think the before I actually started making my weight cut, I was like 190 something, 197 or something like that before I started actually
Okay.
cutting the weight. And then you just sweat and sweat and sweat. There's a lot of water in the body, so yeah.
When do you start the weight cut? Cuz so the weigh in is the day before the fight in the morning,
Yep.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So how far before that are you starting the weight cut?
So the first part of the weight cut is what we call water loading. That's just drinking as much water as you can during the day. I think they had me on 8 liters a day, so a little over 2 gallons,
Mm.
and that's just to flush the electrolytes out of your body. So you feel super weird, a little weak, and you get cramps really easily during the week. But it preps your body for just sweating everything out. And so then,
And this is I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is about a week out from the fight where this
yeah,
starts. Okay.
yeah, I started on
And
Monday. Yeah,
mhm.
Monday
And when
before the
you're
fight.
Monday before the fight, about 2 gallons of water a day. And what are you allowed to eat the week of the fight?
Proteins and fats. No, no electrolytes, so no salt and no carbs. It's pretty rough.
Hmm. Fat you're getting from butter, avocado, eggs.
I don't. So they actually prepare all of our meals for fight week, so I don't need to worry about it. Um, so what they were giving me was um, beef flank, so just strips of beef and salmon and like a chicken salad with no salt in it. And then they gave me 2 snacks a day. One was just a little cup of blueberries usually, and the
Oh,
other one was
jeez.
um, like a fat bomb dessert. It was pretty much peanut butter with additional oil in it, and then a little tiny film of high fat, low sugar chocolate. So,
Are you hungry that week, or are you just so full of water that it's not really you don't have hunger pains?
so, so I'm a high carb kind of guy. My body does the best on carbs. So this week I get really grouchy.
Really?
because they're not letting me have any carbs, and it just sort of sucks. Um, so I get hungry, but I'm so tired of eating bland protein that I also lose my appetite. So
Okay.
the last 2 days of the weight cut, I couldn't even eat all my meals. I just couldn't stomach it. So so you're hungry, but you also just can't look at the food anymore. So it's a weird thing.
Wow. Um, and and then so on the normal diet, because I wanted to ask about that too, and then we can kind of come back to the day before. So on the normal diet, you're eating a lot of carbs, which is kind of interesting. I'm a little bit surprised by that, but it's like the body types are different. Um, I don't feel good on a lot of carbs, so I just mostly eat protein. But what are you normally eating? What's your diet outside of sort of maybe even outside of training camp, just in general?
A lot of pasta. I do a lot of
Hmm.
pasta. Um, I do like a high vegetable content diet. So usually, if I'm not training a whole lot, I tend to gravitate towards pasta and potatoes with vegetable and a little bit of cheese or meat.
Okay.
That's what I tend to eat, gravitate to day. The harder I train, the more my body also starts craving meat, and so my fatty meat intake goes up.
Hmm.
But I still stay very carb heavy. Um, it's
Fascinating.
just how I feel best. I don't know if I have this gene, but I do know that a lot of plain people, so Mennonite Amish, have a gene that helps us um, digest carbs better. I don't know if I have it, but
Really?
it might be because I do best on a high carb diet.
Well, I've never heard that before. You think that's legit? That sounds like a sort of like an old wives' fable, but is that
The
legit? I've never heard
Amish,
of that.
the Amish in particular, but also plain Mennonite communities are like the favorite study group for geneticists because, because we're so inbred. so
Okay,
so you
sure.
can really see. I mean, so you can really see very unusual genetic traits that are disproportionately representative in these Amish and Plain communities.
Okay.
So they have lots of things that the general population don't have. So it wouldn't surprise me if that is a real thing.
Fascinating. Yeah, I have a friend who is I don't I he's he'll run a marathon, a few times a year. I don't think he's like an ultra runner. I mean, he has run like more than longer than a marathon a time or two, but I don't know what the term is. He's an avid runner, we could just say, and very fit, very healthy, and eats a lot of carbs. And he said he feels good on carbs. And when I bump into someone like that, that's always sort of surprising to me because I don't feel good on, I just don't feel good on carbs. I mean, most of the time, when I eat only carnivore, I feel fantastic. That's the best I ever feel. It's just straight carnivore, but I don't do that. It's kind of a pain to just eat only that way all the time. So I just basically eat a protein heavy diet, and then every now and then my gut feels like it's getting jacked up, and I go on carnivore for a few weeks, and it kind of just heals it all. So I just don't feel great on a lot of carbs. But it's fascinating that that works for you. Is that a common? Is it easy to eat that way in Germany?
I lost a little bit of that. Can you ask that question
Sorry,
again?
is it easy to eat that way in Germany? High carb,
The high carb? Oh
high
yeah,
carb.
oh yeah. There's so much bread and potatoes and pasta over there. It's perfect.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. German bread's amazing.
I'll bet it
And
is.
then Italy's not far away, so there's lots of good pasta products as well.
Wow. Have you noticed a difference in how pasta makes you feel when you eat it in America versus when you eat it in Germany?
I notice in general that I feel a lot better on the food over in Europe. Um, the food quality from the grocery store just seems to be higher quality. Um, just like the normal stuff that you buy seems to be better. I always get stomach issues when I come back. Um, and
Really?
part of me things, well, that might just be that my gut biome has changed and now I digest the food over there better. But the first times I went over there, I felt amazing. I felt different. Um, and like my gut and digestion just felt so much better, especially the first time I went to France. When I lived in France for about like 3 weeks and lived with a family over there and just ate what they ate, I felt so good. And they were feeding me like cheese and wine and bread all the time, but I felt great. I felt so good. So I don't think it's a gut biome thing. I think it's just the food quality tends to be better over there.
Isn't that something? That is remarkable. Well, you know what it is, dude. It's two things. It's genetically modified food here in the States, and also then the pesticides that they spray on the genetically modified food. I mean, that's what it is. It's not rocket science. I mean, they've outlawed a lot of the things that we do to our food over here is just not even legal in other countries.
Yeah, the EU is very, very conservative as far as what you're allowed to do to food. In the research that I've read, I don't think most GMOs are harmful, but the over processing that we do does really mess with your gut. It makes things either too bioavailable or not bioavailable enough, and it can just really mess uh, with the balance of your gut biome. So I think it's the high processing and the pesticides. Pesticides are a big deal.
Yeah, well, you're totally right about that. That processing, that's the third leg on the stool, then for sure, because we process the crap out of our stuff here too. Yeah, I
It
don't.
makes it last longer. Like you see with bread over there,
Yeah,
a day later it's hard, and it doesn't really get moldy. It just keeps getting harder and harder and harder. And over here, it doesn't ever really get hard, but it gets moldy then at some point. But it
yeah.
lasts. It stays soft and it lasts a lot longer. But over there, you eat your bread that day or the next day, or you're cooking with it because otherwise you'll break your teeth on it.
Yes, isn't that interesting? And that's how food is, in my opinion, meant to be eaten. I mean, yeah, I mean, you might have a different opinion about the genetically modified. I just tend to, when companies start to tamper with things that are natural in order to make it more productive, get your yield greater, make less waste, and there's a financial incentive for that, I just tend not to trust it, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
So,
it's what we've been doing with plants since the beginning of agriculture, but I prefer to be more conservative with it. I prefer the European approach to it, where that even if it seems like it's okay, let's be careful. Let's
yeah.
take it slow. Um, Especially if it's something that you're putting in your body every day. But I appreciate that approach more. It's like, okay, the literature seems to say it's okay, but let's be careful. I
Yes.
appreciate that approach.
Yes, I 100% agree. And also, I think there's variances. I think there's a spectrum. Like, there's probably some genetically modified things that are worse than others. It's not all the same.
Probably, yeah.
Um, but it's just the thing you get with incentives is incentives drive action. And our whole food system is built with certain incentives. And anyhow, yeah, I think it is a little bit unfortunate that people that never leave America would have no idea that you might be able to eat the same food in another country and feel fantastic, and here it makes you feel sick.
Yeah.
um
I've seen some studies on pasta and that the pasta here and the pasta there do completely different things with your sugar levels and gut biome. Haven't read extensively on it, but just anecdotally from me, super basic things just sit differently. They just make you feel different here as opposed to over there.
yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, so coming back to the week before, 2 gallons of water a day, mostly protein, mostly fat, no carbs, and then a day before the weigh-in, is that when you're really going for that final weight cut?
So So I don't actually cut that much weight. Um, Fighting at 105 and walking around at 200, 205 is actually a pretty reasonable cut. A lot of guys are walking around at 220, 220, 230, and then cutting the whole way down. So it's really not that bad. I complain a lot about it, just because I don't like it. But there's other guys
Golly.
that can barely walk and need help on the scales and stuff like that, which get the shakes. So I'm not doing that. I can walk on my own 2 feet,
But isn't that
and I have enough
something
energy
that
to
they
complain.
can
So
barely
it's really not
function,
that bad.
24 to what is it? 24 plus 12, 36 hours before a fight, a day and a half before a fight, they can barely walk. That's crazy. Is it just that
Yeah,
they,
yeah,
I mean, eat. So then, all right. So then after they weigh in, they're eating, they're replenishing, they're getting back on track. But still, you could barely walk a day and a half before a fight, right? There has to be some consequences for that in the fight.
yeah. So the more weight you cut, the more of an advantage you have in the early rounds, especially. So for a lot of people, they consider it worth it because they come in and they're bigger and stronger, and they get maybe a round and a half where they have a pretty significant advantage, and then hopefully they've hurt the guy enough, made him tired enough that you can then ride out the rest, and hold that advantage. I just I don't like it. I'm a martial artist first, and an athlete
Mm.
second, and a fighter third. I want to be able to go in there and do and perform at the best of my ability, both from a technical level and a um, athletic level. And I don't feel like I can do that if I'm putting my body through that, because no one else who does some sort of intense athletic endeavor voluntarily says, well, you know what, just for fun, I think I might just dehydrate myself a day before and not eat a whole lot and uh, ruin my sleep cycle just shortly before a fight or this athletic endeavor. And then, I don't know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And up until this point, even against really big guys, I've never felt weak. I felt a little small sometimes fighting against guys that are 6'3" and whatnot. Sometimes feel a little small, but if I get a hold of guys, I've never felt weak. So um, I feel more confident not cutting a whole lot, um, and saving my organs for when I'm not fighting, so I don't get
Yeah.
uh, kidney or liver failure later. And there's also the fact I go into a fight with a lot of nerves, and so uh, often I'm a little bit tight in the first round, and you end up getting hit a lot, and your brain
Mm.
is the last place that gets rehydrated. So you see guys that cut a lot and then they switch down a weight class, and all of a sudden they can take shots that would have starched them up a weight class, just because their brain cushioning is there. I've read it takes about 48 hours to rehydrate the protection around your brain, and you're not getting that after a weight cut. So the more you cut,
Oh,
the
fascinating. I didn't know
the
that.
less of
That
a
is
shot you can take.
interesting. What what do all fighters get the nerves that you deal with, or do you feel like you deal with nerves more than some fighters? How do you handle that leading up to a fight?
More than some, less than others. Um, People are very, very different. They all deal with that stress very differently. Um, and it depends. Sometimes I'm not that nervous, but with my UFC career not really going the way I would have liked it to,
Mhm.
I keep getting in these situations where I'm under a lot of pressure to perform, or else I could lose my job. So that's a lot of pressure. And I don't know, you just need to
Yeah.
sort of words of encouragement and just mantras that you just keep saying over and over and over to yourself, and convince yourself that, hey, these, like, even if these thoughts and things are legitimate to some degree, you can do this. You've been training for this. You're ready. You're fit. You're strong. Like that, those sort of things. You just need to keep pumping yourself up and pumping yourself up. And it's like, you can do this. Come on. It's okay if you're nervous. Nervousness is normal. It's something that I tell my guys when they fight too. You often go into a fight and your arms feel weak and your legs feel weak and you feel sick to your stomach and everything seems like it's moving really slowly. You feel like you're moving really slowly. And I tell them and tell myself too, you're not as slow as you think. You're not as weak as you think. It's just because your senses are heightened. So everything seems slow and weak, but you're still strong. You're just as strong as you were in training. You're just as fast as you were in training.
How far
Just
out
go
from the
and do the
fight
things that you've been
do
training
these
to do.
nerves really start for you?
For me, it was leading up to the weight cut. So about Thursday before the fight. So if the fight's on Saturday, about 3 days, the nerves are really started kicking in.
There you're back again. So I think you were saying Thursday is when the nerves
Sorry, I
really
lost you
kind
for
of
a
start
second
to
again.
kick in for you. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thursday before the fight, usually about 3 days before. Yeah, usually, because that's when it really starts getting real. You're cutting weight, you don't feel good, and you just keep thinking about it. Like, oh, in a couple days, I'll be standing in a cage, half naked, in front of thousands of people, on TV, in front of millions of people, and it could go very badly. And it just
How much of that is the
really messing with you
knowledge
sometimes,
that
but
things could go very bad for you physically, like injury, and how much is just the performance aspect, the wanting to do well aspect, etc.? Okay.
For me, it's more the wanting to do well, especially now in this fight, with feeling like everything's on the line again. I've never had a significant injury in the 17 professional fights that I've had. Never had a significant injury, so it's there. Like, you know, it can happen, but it's not forefront on my mind. Like, this time I was thinking a lot more about cuts again, because in my last fight, I got a toenail through my lip. And so I was thinking, like, oh no, what happens if you get sliced open again? Like, don't really want that. But
I see.
yeah, I've never been significantly hurt, so it's not a big fear of mine. But I can imagine if you had been hurt in a fight, that would be a big deal to get over.
Do you
subsequent fights?
Do you vomit at all before a fight ever? Okay.
No. This fight, I felt like I might.
What's sort of the most surreal part of the moment? I'm picturing, you know, in your kind of your room before the walkout, the coming into the cage, the time in the cage before the fight, when it starts. Like, what's kind of the most sort of, I guess, where does your mind kind of just almost like black out the most, or what's the most kind of surreal part of that whole experience?
For me, it's probably when you're sitting around waiting in the warm-up area, especially after you maybe have already had a shakeout and you see fighters coming and going, and then you see them on the screen, and some of them are winning, some of them are losing, because we're often sharing warm-up areas with other guys. So you're warming up and you're warming up beside some other guy, you're looking at him, he's looking at you, and then he gets called, he goes, and then you see him on TV, and you see him win or get knocked out, or whatever. And you're
Wow.
like, oh, yeah, I think I'm next. All right, here goes. And then you get called,
Hmm.
and then it's a big hustle and bustle, so you're sort of distracted by everything. Um, and then your music's playing, the crowd's going wild, there's all these things to do. Then your opponent comes in, and so there's just things going on. And then Bruce Buffer's calling your name, so that's a big thing. Everyone's cheering, everyone's having a great time. And then everyone goes out of the cage, and it's you, the other guy, and the ref. You're standing across the cage, and you're looking at him, and it starts getting quiet, and it's just the lights and your opponent, and then the ref says go, and it's
Wow.
like, what am what am I doing here? This seems like a really bad idea, and often you can sort of see that same thought in your opponent's eyes, and it's like, you just want to get out of here, like grab a beer and chill
Wow.
instead. Like, like what are we doing? Why are we trying to hurt each other right now? And but then you get hit in the
Yeah,
face,
it's
and
game on. Yeah, yeah.
then it all
Do
turns
you
back
feel it
on. You
when you
get
get hit
going,
in the face or really
and it's work.
anywhere, or
Yeah,
is the adrenaline so high? Okay.
you definitely feel it. It hurts, but for me personally, the first hit feels like it's happening to me. It's like, oh no, I just got hit, and after that,
Fascinating.
it feels like it's happening to someone else. Like you feel it, you recognize it, you know that one's going to hurt tomorrow, but um, it's like it's happening to someone else. There's almost like, for me, there's almost a distance between the pain that I recognize and
Sure. Sure.
what's
It's
actually
almost
happening
like
to me.
a
It's weird.
yeah. Yeah,
It's hard
okay.
to describe.
And do you think probably
Almost
all the
almost out
fighters
of
it's
body.
very
Yeah.
similar to that, you think? That's probably not unique to you, right?
I don't know. I don't know if they'd verbalize it like that. I don't know if that's what they feel. I think
Okay.
some guys just
Yeah.
don't really notice until later, and I think other guys really notice, because
Hmm.
some guys you hit and they flinch and they react really strong, and you know, okay, he's feeling it. And then other guys just eat it and act like nothing's happening
Yeah.
until until they get actually knocked out, um, or something like that. But for me,
Yep.
it's just
Mm.
sort of
Hmm.
there.
Hmm. And if
It's
you
happening
take
around
a
me.
knockout punch to the face, if someone gets knocked out, they really don't feel that, or is that even, or is that extremely painful? I'm kind of assuming if it's a knockout punch, they're not even really feeling it. But have you taken a punch like that, and how does that feel?
So I haven't been knocked out in MMA. I have the TKO loss to Abus, but I was still there, so it's not quite, doesn't wouldn't answer that question. I've only got knocked out in a kickbox fight
Mm.
before, and when you get knocked out, it sort of deletes a little bit of your memory. So
Mm-hmm.
um, you wake up and you're
Yeah.
often confused, and you don't actually know what happened to you until you see it later. So even if you're noticing it in the moment while you're awake, it might hurt. It sort of deletes a
Yeah.
bit of your memory, so there's just like
Are
this
you able
black
to?
sliver that you just don't remember,
Okay. Sure.
and that
Sure.
goes after
Are
and
you able
before the
to
hit.
watch fights for
So
fun on nights where you're not fighting? Okay.
it's become less fun. If there's a party going on, I'll watch it and I'll have a good time. But at this point, I know a lot of the guys,
Okay.
even at the high level, and it's a bit more stressful than it was. Um, and yeah, so it's not quite the um, the nice pastime thing that you do with your buddies that it used to be. But it can still be fun. It's just you see guys that you really need to win, or that and you want them to win, and
Yeah.
and your heart's in your throat the whole time because you know how it
Yep.
feels when it goes well, and you know
How
how it feels when it goes badly.
well, I want to hear about your fight, your last fight in Austin from your perspective. Um I actually was not aware of you as a fighter until that night. I only got into the UFC really spring summer. I pushed it off for a couple years. I don't know why exactly I did that. But but I am really, really enjoying it. I mean, it is. I just think it's really impressive what they've done now with the production value, even on fight nights. I mean, certainly the pay per view, but the way they tell the stories of the fighters, the way they give
Yeah.
the history, kind of what's at stake in a very concise and entertaining fashion. I just think it's really, really impressive what they're doing with the UFC, and it's so fun to watch. Um, and I thought the Saturday night the Austin fight was, I mean, for me it was like especially fun to watch. There was something about in the preliminaries, for starters, you had those two knockouts from getting picked up and slamming on the side of the head, which I had never seen before. And then it happened twice in one night, which was crazy. And it was Austin, and the crowd was full, and it was into it, and it was a great night. And but I had to go to our gym had a Christmas party, so I watched the prelims. Then we went to the Christmas party, came back, and then of course your fight was the first fight on the main card, right? So started with that, and dude, you looked really good. I mean, I didn't know who you were as a fighter before that, but you looked really good from my perspective. I mean, you were actually listed as a fairly significant underdog in that fight, correct? But you body positioning looked fantastic. You took a couple early that it didn't seem to really phase you that much, but I'd just love to hear about the fight from your perspective. And congratulations, by the way, because it was a really entertaining fight. And again, I just thought you looked really good through the whole fight.
Well, I appreciate that. As I said, there was a lot of nerves going to this one, so nerves always make you move a little bit slower and a little bit more stiff. So it definitely took a little bit to get that worked out. And being a huge underdog, I wasn't super surprised. I'm not a betting man, but if I was, and I was mostly just going off of UFC performances, I would have bet against me too. But I know I am a lot better than my performances. And I know there's a lot of room for me to, like, even after this fight, to go in there and be a lot better than what I show. Even though this fight, I'm pretty happy with my performance.
Really?
Which is the first time I can say that in the UFC, which is nice. Yeah. So it felt really good. We had been the biggest thing that I've been having trouble with in the UFC was my kickboxing. I've been doing Muay Thai for a long time now, and did karate before that, so my stand-up's actually pretty good. But I was always a little bit slower and a little bit stiffer standing up than on the ground. For some reason, the transition, even though I'd been striking maybe even longer than I've been grappling, the transition from grappling training to fighting was a lot easier for me. So the grappling and wrestling has always been pretty good, pretty on point. The striking has always been lagging behind a little bit from my actual ability. And then when I made my UFC debut, things were really turned on its head as far as my training schedule due to the COVID lockdowns and the COVID restrictions, and certain coaches had to start working normal jobs and weren't around as much to help me out. And I wasn't making enough to pay them. So my structure and the consistency of my striking training went down a lot. And so I just was getting stiff, slow, and with every with every fight that didn't go super well on the feet, I was becoming less confident. So then there was that too. And so after my last fight, we took a step back. We rebuilt my training structure around kickboxing, and we just did a ton of kickboxing. And got, first of all, my confidence and my we just got those reps in, so my body knew what it was doing again, and we built up my confidence to know that I can hit hard and I can hit fast, and I can do it for 3 rounds easy. Um, and then we took it up a notch and also improved my ability. So we got back to where I was. We built my confidence above where it was, and then we built my technique above where it was, and I felt great. I went in there, and especially once I got a little bit warm, especially at the end of the first where I dropped them, at that point, I had my distance, I had my timing. I was starting to hit and then not get hit a lot more, instead of just trading punches. So it was good. It was a really good feeling. And then in the first round, I would grab them, and I didn't commit too much on the throw. I didn't want to gas out my arms, but especially once I started hitting him more standing up, he was focusing more on that, and then it was a lot easier to get a good grip on him. And once I get a good grip on guys, they usually fly. So, and then on the ground, I feel very confident, as I said. So
would you
once those hooks were
would you do
in,
the same thing again with not committing too much on the first couple of kind of throws, or would you hold on and commit more if you were doing that again?
I should probably commit more, and I probably will. Yeah, it was more of a confidence thing, not quite being confident in my fitness and my and staying loose while tired on the feet, which shouldn't necessarily be the case. I'm very fit. My fitness has always been a strength of mine as long as I'm healthy, and I was healthy. I hadn't been healthy for a long time. I was out for a year, and so that's why a lot of those doubts and a lot of those insecurities were coming up in those clinch moments where you get those nerves in your arms and your arms feel heavy, and I'm like, well, I don't want to blow out my arms. I'll just ride them and try to hit them on the transition. But I maybe would have gotten the fight done sooner if I would have grappled with them. But the other side, I think letting the fight go on a little bit longer helped me find my rhythm, and that's going to pay dividends further down the road as far as my confidence in my next fight. So at the end of the day, even if I would have been able to get the finish sooner, if I would have committed more, I'm glad it went the way it did. I'm glad I had my fire that I had to go through, and I'm glad I came out the other end feeling calm, confident, and powerful. So
good. I'm happy to hear that. And how much of a confidence builder was dropping him right at the end of the first round? Really?
Oh, it was huge. It was huge to see him sit down like that.
Okay.
And then to take a step forward and the bell rings and you see like the bit of panic on his face, like, oh, I just got saved. Oh, it was huge. You sit down, you get that shakeout. I don't even think I remember anything my coaches said. They probably told me to keep front kicking them and more or less keep doing what I'm doing. But I was just so geared up.
So was that
this now? So
I have to think there's some point in the fights that you win where it's like,
it was awesome.
I think we can. Let's go for this now. I really feel this. Was that the point in this fight for you where it's like, oop, I think I got this guy. It's just now a matter of time?
Yes, but in 2 of my other fights in the UFC, the one against Vieira and Mearshart, I had those moments a little bit. With the Vieira fight going into the 3rd round, I felt pretty confident that I was winning. and I felt that if I could keep the pressure up, I would be able to get a finish. And I got overconfident and over eager, and ended up losing the fight. And then the same thing in the Meerschaert fight. Third round came around. I had been smashing him for 2 rounds, and I thought, I'm going to get it now. Got over eager and got finished again and again on the ground where I really shouldn't have been getting finished. So I knew the guys in the UFC know what they're doing. They're good. They've all been hurt before. They've all been in those hard spots. Just keep doing what you're doing. If the finish is there, the finish will come. Don't rush it, but keep working for it. And that's what we did. Even when I took his back, I focused a lot on just holding the position. I saw that I had a minute, so I just took my time. Like, don't go in and squeeze your arms out on a choke that you can't get, just to get stood up for the next round, and then your arms are gassed. But just worked it in there. And then when I saw, okay, I'm pretty close, then I was like, well, I'll just squeeze. I can squeeze for 30 seconds and see what happens.
And when you squeezed, it looked like there was a point in the choke where it kind of almost looked like there was a point where he kind of gave his chin up for you, but I assume that's just because you were squeezing so hard and it just kind of popped under. Is that what happened? Yep.
Yeah, so I was on his jaw, but if you squeeze the jaw hard enough, it will break. And I was squeezing pretty hard at that point. So there's just, so at a certain point, you have to tap to the jaw pressure, or you have to get your jaw out of there. But the only way to get your jaw out of there is to lift it. So it's a very natural reaction that when your jaw is getting pressed back into your throat, that you just twist your jaw out of there to get out of the pain, and then the arm just slips right onto the throat. So do you think
he was trying to protect his jaw and get it out of there, and that's when he kind of moved it and your choke slipped under? Okay.
Yeah, so he's probably just trying to find a better angle.
Okay, that makes total sense.
And then as soon as you move it, then it just slips. Because, I mean, I'm using all of my back muscles against his jaw. So if he just moves it a little bit and doesn't have quite the right wedge.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because there was a point where, like I said, it kind of almost looked like he gave up his chin, which, I knew he obviously would, and that's the end. But at that point, I guess you just have no options, and you're just moving, and then it finished.
Yeah, and if the angle's right, it doesn't matter if the chin's in. You can still choke.
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to block the wind, you're trying to get the blood vessels on the side. So if your chin's in the middle, you can still choke.
I saw on at least one of your highlight videos, that's all people really can Google your name on YouTube and or search your name on YouTube, and you got some cool highlight videos on there. But I saw a couple finishes, chokes, I guess you basically did from the side, which I haven't seen a whole lot, but it kind of looked like it wasn't just the traditional choke, but it looked like you were more on the side of the guy, choking him from the side. Obviously, you can finish him that way too if you get a good choke on there. Do you know what I'm talking about or no? Okay. Yeah, it was just chokes that were more.
Not actually sure what you're talking about. I mean, you don't mean a side choke, do you? Like
it wasn't a head and arm. It was a choke around the neck, but it was just more from the side than
MMA.
Like the Austin fight with Soriano. It was just more from the side than I normally see, I guess, is all. But it got it done.
Yeah, you can move your body a little bit. Okay. What's important is where your underarm and your upper arm is. If they're blocking the arteries, that's what matters.
That makes sense.
If the guy twists his body, but you still have that control over the neck,
well,
doesn't matter that much.
You looked really strong. You looked really fit. You looked confident. It looked to me like you were moving extremely well on Saturday night. So I'm happy to hear that you were pumped, because you should be. That was a really good fight in front of just this crowd that was into it. It was Austin, Texas, and Yeah,
Oh, it's
I mean,
awesome.
I would have loved to have been there live to that fight. Just the whole setup for the whole thing, and I mean, it was a fight night, but man, it felt like a pay per view event. There was just some really fun fights that night. It was really fun to watch. So congratulations again.
Yeah, it was an absolutely great um, night of fights. So why I left the arena thinking there is no way that I got a bonus. We had a good fight. No way there was a bonus involved. But uh, Dana got
Oh, really? Oh,
just
sweet. I didn't know
really
you got a
pumped up with all the
bonus.
fights and gave all the finishers bonuses.
Oh, nice.
So
That's
we ended up
fun.
getting one out. Yeah,
Heck yeah.
yeah, we got a bonus too. So it was a good night. It was a real good night. But yeah, it was just one of those nights. If Dana's giving out like
Okay.
more than the normal three bonuses, then it was a good night of fights, and he
Yeah,
was
no
really
doubt.
happy. So
Have you
so
seen?
that speaks
I
volumes.
forget these fighters' names, but it happened twice that night where I think the one guy was getting out of a potentially an arm bar, and he picks the guy up, puts him sideways, and slammed him. You know, it happened twice that night. Both times he got knocked out. That's not common, right? Have you seen that before? Have you seen it much? Did you watch those? Did you watch those fights later to see that? Oh, okay. So you're watching. Okay, I didn't
I
expect
watched
that.
those fights while
So,
they were happening.
okay.
I was back in the warm up room, so I could, yeah. Um, you don't see them a lot. I think I think I saw a graphic where it has a list of all the slam knockouts in the UFC, and it's usually like once a
Yeah. Yeah.
year at the most, and then there was just two in Austin. So it was an unusual night. Um, you need to be careful with it because you're not allowed to spike, so, and they tell us that every time in the rules meeting. So you're
Mm-hmm.
not allowed to drop someone on the top of their head where it compresses their spine. But both of them did a really good job where they were angling it off to the side and using the floor to impact the head, much like you would strike or kick,
Yeah.
instead of compressing the spine
Yeah.
where you could ruin someone's life or kill them. So they did a great job
Yeah.
following the rules
If they had been slammed on
and
the back of their
getting
head,
some
would
pretty
they
awesome
have been
finishes.
knocked out still or no? Was there something about hitting the temple?
The back of the back of the head's okay too. I've seen guys get most of the slams that I've seen were they hit their shoulders and the
Okay.
back of the head whips into the mat and that knocks them out. So that's how a lot of them happen. This whole bringing them to the side and slamming them down. It's something that I've
Mm-hmm.
theorized before. um, because if you slam onto the back and
Yeah.
it doesn't knock them out, then you just land tighter in the submission. But if you swing them out and drop them on the side,
Mm-hmm.
you can break the submission. So I think it's super smart how they did it. And if you're going to be slamming, you should be slamming like that because first of all, you get a good chance to knock them out like they did. And even if you don't, the chance
Okay.
of you getting out of
Fascinating.
the submission is now a
It would be
lot
interesting to
higher
see if we see a
than if
little
you're
bit
doing
more
it
of that,
straight onto the back.
if fighters see how it worked so well twice in one night and if there's a little bit more of that. Um, what do you do? What'd you do after your win Saturday
Yeah.
night? You just must be elated and feeling great and kind of feeling on top of the world for a few days.
Um, for me, especially if I'm fighting in the U.S., pretty much my
Mhm.
only priority is to see and hang out with my family afterwards. So my mom, my
Oh,
dad,
cool.
my stepfather, and my grandmother were all there. Um, yeah, so we, me and my team. Oh, and
Younger
my brother
brother?
was in my corner, which is just awesome. Um, so we, yeah, so me and my team, we went back to the hotel uh, and got showered, got our laundry all together, and my family all went to the Airbnb that my mom and grandma and stepfather were staying at, and they and
Nice.
we just got pizza. Pizza and beer is usually what we go for. Uh, it's just I think every time, like, this time I might want something a little bit like
Yeah.
nicer. I don't know, but then no, I just want pizza and beer. Well, it's, the further the fight the cut
Yes.
goes, the more I'm just like, nope,
Yes.
no, I just want greasy pizza and beer, and that's all I want. And then
Oh, cool.
we
You get that
sat
news that
around and
night?
talked a little bit, and then we got the news for the bonus, which, oh no, they don't tell us. They just
Oh.
post it on Instagram. My coach saw it on Instagram, and well,
Okay.
my manager did tell me, but I didn't see it. So because I was getting a whole bunch of
No way. Is
congratulations,
is
so I didn't
is
see
that
it.
is
So
that a
we
fifty
found
thousand
out
dollar
through
bonus or what's the
Instagram.
bonus
Yeah,
on that?
sort of weird.
Fifty
Yeah,
thousand dollar bonus, yeah, because that's usually what they just give to the basically the
yeah,
best
$50,000.
finishes of the night, correct? So you're saying
Yeah,
that okay, not everyone who won, but everyone who got a finish that night got a bonus.
yep.
Oh, cool. Okay,
Everyone that got a
awesome.
finish. Yeah,
So what's next? Do
yeah,
you kind of
yeah.
wait to hear about a potential another fight? Are you heading back to Germany to do some more training? What's next for you?
Heading back to Germany, I've got some uh, family stuff planned out. Um, I've been away from
Mm,
home and from my wife for 8 weeks now, so I'm ready to go back. I've been away from my team. I've been away from my gym. I'm just, yeah, enjoying my time here with my family for now, but uh, I'm ready to go back home,
oh,
uh,
cool.
which is what Germany has really become for me. So ready to go back, and then after that, uh, early in the year, me me and my wife are flying out to visit my older sister who lives in India, and then we're all coming back to the States for a family vacation soon after that. So I got some family stuff going on, and then hopefully late spring
Okay.
be
Okay.
able to get another fight. That
Awesome.
would be
And
the
at this
best window.
point, you just don't you really have no idea who that might be, what the setup might be. It's just a waiting game, right? You train and you wait and you prepare and that's all you can do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Um, don't know when,
Yeah.
don't know where, don't know against whom. So,
Yeah.
and honestly, at this point, I don't really care. I'm happy. Just uh, yeah, ready to see all my people, and then
Okay.
I'll start itching for training pretty soon. So uh,
Yeah. You just gonna go kind of fight
that'll
by
come
fight
on
right
its
now and
own,
kind of
and then
see
I'll get
how it
back in the gym.
goes, or what what are you thinking in terms of your UFC career right now? Oh, okay.
I still have 2 fights on my contract, so I would like to get both of them in next year, maybe by the fall if everything goes right. Get both fights in, and finally get
Hmm.
fights without a half a year or a year of a break in between, and try to build up a little bit of momentum, end this contract on a good note, and then uh, decide where to go from there. See if the UFC wants to keep me around. See if we can get a good contract. Um, I'm 32, so I'm not like super old for the sport, but I don't want to do it forever either. So we'll see what I need to just
Hmm.
focus on getting this contract
Yeah.
done on the best
Heck
note that
yeah.
I can,
Well,
and
congratulations again,
then see
dude.
where
You,
we
you
go from
really
there.
look great. It was a fun fight to watch. I thought almost all the fights were fun to watch in particular. And thanks for jumping on this podcast, man. I really appreciate this. I really enjoyed it. I'll be watching out for you in the future for sure. Anything else you wanted
Yeah, of course.
to
Thank
chime
you.
in here
Appreciate
with?
it.
What's your
Um,
favorite
I can't really think
sort
of
of
anything
Amish food?
myself. Yeah.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was
Yeah.
always a big lover of snitz pie. Um, I do really like that. And then, but probably the biggest association I have with that sort of food is I don't even know what they call it, but when we would be over at my cousin's farm, they often had breakfast that was
I
just
forgot
saltine
about
crackers and
this.
milk heated up. Um, like cracker mush or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember what they call it. But that's that's one of the biggest things I associate with that sort of food.
Oh
But
my
snitz
goodness, it's so
pie
good.
is probably my number one. I love that stuff. For people who don't know what it is, it's dried
Okay, I
apples
didn't even know what
and
was
a
in it, but
ton of
yes, it
sugar,
is good.
and it's fantastic.
Schnitz pie with canned peaches with a little bit of that juice, extra juice in there is fantastic. My wife's parents are still Amish, and
Oh yeah,
when we were dating, she made dinner one time on a Sunday night. I just remember this, and dude, it was the best Sunday night dinner I'd ever had. I mean, brown noodles, canned turkey with barbecue sauce. It's just ridiculous. And to this day, when we go there, there's always pretzels and cheese, for a snack with maybe some cider. There's always a snack. There's always food involved. Anytime you go there to hang out or stop in or visit or whatever. And I love that part about the Amish culture. It just food is very integral very central to their community and their tradition. I really I love that about them. I think
yeah,
that's really really great. Yes. All right, dude. I'll let you go.
yeah. Work
Congratulations
hard,
again.
eat
Thank you
hard.
very much for being on here. I really enjoyed it. I'll be watching out for you in the future. All right. See you, man.